Westminster's a cosy little club, and they're going to have to make room for people who don't belong to the club and who don't want to go into politics to become part of the club. That's what's wrong with the House of Commons. It's dominated by people who see it as a private club, who see politics as their private property, who see those benches as a sinecure, and who see politics as a career. And I think that is fundamentally what's gone wrong with this country.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the reasons why I think we need change in this country is because we need people to formulate policies who are in touch with ordinary people. So much of the process of writing policy amongst the big corporate parties is done by people whose only experience of life is to go to the same sorts of Oxbridge colleges, to study the same degrees that make them think that they know the answers to everything, and then go into politics and write policies for the rest of us. We have in this room tonight Suzanne Evans, who's writing Ukip's policy manifesto. Someone who is very much in touch with ordinary people. And I think we need politics that speaks for ordinary people, not for people who've only ever worked in Westminster. The manifesto that we're going to publish, the manifesto that Suzanne is working on, is going to be a coherent document. It's not going to be promising motherhood and apple pie. It's going to be 100% credible. And I think it's going to offer some fundamental change in the way this country is governed, change for the better. Now, why do I think we so desperately need change? What is it that I think has gone wrong, and why do we need to put it right? Well, I start from the point of view that this is a great country. This is, I think, the greatest country on earth. This is an extraordinary and a remarkable country. Politics is failing in this country. Politics is failing because it's a cartel. It's a fix. It's run for the convenience of politicians. Now, I mentioned earlier that television programme, Inside the House of Commons. Do you know what I found so remarkable about that programme? It showed the world what, as an MP, I already knew. You saw the way that the whips fixed things. The whips actually got MPs to ask the questions that they wanted asked. People didn't ask the questions that their constituents wanted. MPs didn't ask the questions that they thought needed to be put to ministers. They asked what the whips wanted them to say. So much of what happens in the House of Commons is choreographed. It's scripted. It's been written beforehand by the whips to try to make them look good. And it's not right. It means that the debates in the House of Commons are all about the red team attacking the blue team and the blue team attacking the red team. And do you know what I find shocking? After all that confected debate, often the red team and the blue team are best buddies in the corridors. They're both in it together. They're both part of the same problem. They're both Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and none of them offers us real change. I joined Ukip because I think we need to break this cartel. We need to change so many things about this country: energy policy, defence policy, Europe policy. But fundamentally, we can't do that without breaking the political cartel in Westminster. Now, simply by supporting Ukip, simply by voting for Ukip, simply by delivering leaflets for Ukip, simply by supporting Suzanne and Bill, you are helping us break that cartel. But UKIP's going to go even further than that. UKIP is going to campaign for real change so that people can hold their MPs directly to account. Now, I don't see why MPs are so frightened of by-elections. I quite like by-elections myself. But I think it's really important that local people should have the power to trigger by-elections if their MPs break their promises or fiddle their expenses or don't honour what they said in their manifestos. And that's why UKIP is going to allow people a proper right of recall to do exactly that. Under UKIP, you will be allowed to trigger, if 1 in 5 people in a constituency signs a petition, you'll be able to trigger a recall vote and hold your MP to account.
Yeah.
We need, I think, more direct democracy in this country. Far too often when I listen to what MPs in the House of Commons are discussing and debating, they're talking about the things that interest them. They're talking about the things that concern them. I think we need to give people a right of initiative so that we can force MPs to debate and vote things that concern us. Our manifesto is going to come forward with some bold and radical ideas to ensure that we have far more direct democratic control over our MPs. I just want to finish really by saying this. Ukip wants real change. And there's an uncomfortable, cosy relationship in Westminster, not just between the established parties, but between the established parties and the big corporate media. And none of them really like the idea of real change. None of them really want to let the fox into the Westminster henhouse. And so one of the charges that they will level at us is that we're somehow backward looking, that we're somehow pessimistic, that we somehow don't want change. But I'm passionately optimistic. We may, as a country, only be 1% of the world's land surface now. But look at what we've achieved. The world speaks our language. Our common law is the law from everywhere from India to the Caribbean to North America to Australia. Our system of parliamentary democracy is the model in many countries around the world. Yeah, for goodness sake, this is a country that sells vodka to the Russians, yeah? cheese to the French and software to the Indians. This is an extraordinary and remarkable country. What we need to do is to make sure that we have politicians who recognise that we're good enough to have self-government again. Thank you.
Well, since we've been over there, we have tried, sincerely tried, to really get stuck in and engage with this place and try to put forward our views democratically, reasonably, politely, and make an impact. And I can honestly say to you, it's a complete waste of time. A complete and utter waste of time. There is no way to change this, because what happens with the European Union is very simple. You've got the European Commission, all past it parliamentarians from various countries. They're sent there, they make the rules and the laws that they're going to put through. Those laws are agreed way in advance with all the different political groups. And when it comes to our chamber, for us to discuss, we can win the argument, blood and thunder, my goodness me. Nigel gets up, he gives them some welling, we all pile him behind, we give a great debate. And you know, at the end of it, they all push the button they're told to press. It makes no difference. One of the classic things was, if you might remember, good old Dave Cameron, he said in the British press, I will stop Mr. Juncker being the president of the European Union. I'm against this man. I'm determined to stop him. And if you saw him, he was strutting round the corridors of Brussels, beetroot red face, people ignoring him, and he was standing up for Britain, very Churchillian. And it came through where we had to press our buttons to vote on whether or not we approved Mr. Juncker and his commission. And we thought, well, you know what? There's the communists over there, the Greens over there, us here, one or two others, who are going to vote against this. Mr. Cameron and his crew said they're against it. They must have some influence. You know, we might be able to stop this. So we walk into the chamber, great anticipation, and Syed Kamal, the leader of the British Conservatives, stands up, and I could feel it now, the crackle and excitement. As he gets up, I thought, this is it. We're going to stop the new commission. We're going to stop them. And he stands up and says, we in the British Conservative Party are going to make a stand. We don't believe that Mr. Juncker and his commission are in the British interests. We are dead set against it. And in order to show just how angry we are, we're going to abstain. And that's what happened. Now, May the 7th, in my opinion, and I've been saying it for some time, I think this is the single most important election in any of our lifetimes. I truly think 1979, 1997 pale into insignificance compared to an election where the sovereignty of our own country is the issue, where our own freedoms and liberties that we're all, thank goodness, can take for granted, these are the issue. So I implore you, I beg you, please get out and argue the case for a UKIP vote, for UKIP MPs, so that we can go forward from here. We may not have the answers to everything. We certainly don't have the answers to everything. But what we will do is we'll put a spoke in the things that are happening that will take away your freedom. Because that's why Jill, Suzanne, Douglas and I, and many of others of you in here I recognise, that's why we do this. That's why we fight so hard. That's why we take the stick. And that's why we work until we drop. Because we give a damn about freedom, democracy and our fantastic, beautiful country. So I'm really honoured to have been invited here tonight. I'll be happy to talk to anyone or take any questions afterwards if there's time. And I want to sincerely say to you all, this is our time, this is our moment. We can change things, we can do it, and we can look back in years to come and say, we saved our country on May the 7th, 2015. Thank you.
I like to think, first of all, that I'm the antidote to the sort of Oxbridge, PPE, parliamentary researcher, did politics for the sake of politics, wants a nice, safe, cosy life in Westminster that Douglas has talked about, because I am very much the opposite. I'm a local girl. I've done a lot of jobs. I'm certainly not somebody that's never done a day's hard work in her life. I think my first job in Shrewsbury was doing a paper round. I've worked in Shrewsbury Market. I've worked in the bars and the pubs and waitressing to pay my way through college and university. I've worked as a journalist. I've worked as a broadcaster. I've worked as a childminder and a nanny. I'm beginning to sound like I can't keep down any job at all now, aren't I? So. And then I set up my own PR and marketing business, and I've also founded a national health charity. So I'm quite well-rounded. I've got quite a lot of different areas of expertise. So I think I have a lot to offer you. I'm somebody who likes to work very hard and get things done, and I've got the political and the life experience to be able to do that. And here in Shrewsbury, one of the first things I would absolutely be 100% committed to as your Member of Parliament is keeping that Accident and Emergency Department open at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital.
My own personal nightmare is the idea that on May the 8th we get Miliband and the Scottish National Party. How would voting UKIP help us hold a balance of power in a circumstance like that? Because you understand the numbers, I don't think I do.
Yeah. We'll often hear it said over the next 40 days that somehow if you don't do what David Cameron and George Osborne want you to do, you'll end up with Ed Miliband. And I think there's something, first of all, a little patrician and patronising about that. It seems to almost be a message directed at the voters to know their place, to do what you're meant to do, or else. I don't think Dave and George quite get it. In a democracy, the idea is that the different parties say what it is they stand for and compete for votes, and then the ballots are counted, and let's see. I could quite easily say to David Cameron and George Osborne, you, Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne, are letting Ed Miliband in. In the Middleton and Hayward by-election, the very same evening as the Clacton by-election, the UKIP candidate, the absolutely superb UKIP candidate, John Bickley, came within 600 votes of winning a Labour seat that had been Labour for as long as it had been a parliamentary constituency. Yeah? The only reason why our candidate didn't get in is because David Cameron put up a candidate and allowed Ed Miliband's candidate to come through. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about these claims that the voters are our property and they need to know their place and do as they're told. Now, if, and who knows what the results are going to be, but if it is the case that no party has overall control, and UKIP has a decisive block of votes, I think people can count on us to use our leverage wisely. We're not going to cut deals to join some grubby coalition. Look at the current coalition. It's not a great advertisement for coalition government. And we're not in politics in order to be part of a coalition government, to get a red ministerial box and a nice comfy car. We don't want that. What we will do is say to the other parties, if you give us some of the things that we care about passionately, we will give you confidence and supply votes. And I'm not going to, it's not my role to do so, I'm not the leader of UKIP, but I do think there are some things that I can imagine we would want. Number one, we're quite keen on an in-out referendum on the EU, not a sort of David Cameron pretender-rendum, but a genuine, free and fair referendum. If you vote UKIP, you will get a proper referendum on our EU membership. Yeah? We will see to that, a free and fair referendum. There are other things that I would like to see. I would like to see a right of recall. I would have grave difficulty in having confidence in any government that didn't allow people to have the power to recall their MPs. And there are a whole range of other things that I think we could insist on. But the only way we're going to get a government that's on our side and that shares our values is by making sure we maximise the number of UKIP MPs. And if I could just finish by saying, long before UKIP got going, the established parties never wanted to talk about immigration.
That's right.
Yeah? They never wanted to talk about a referendum. The only reason why they're talking about it now is because people are thinking of voting UKIP. Imagine what would happen if all those people thinking about voting UKIP actually went and voted UKIP. We might actually get a government serious about controlling our borders.
I want to ask Bill a particular question, but you share his skills. How did you manage to get Dudley North Conservatives to choose such a good first candidate?
Well, I think I'll just be brief on that. Basically, Dudley North Conservatives chose a man who got very desperate because they could see that their vote was completely dissipating. Now, this will happen all across the country to Conservative and Labour groups when they realise that UKIP is beating them on the ground. This man, Mr. Afzal Amin, who, for those of you who don't know, tried to make a deal with the EDL to stage some kind of fake march and then call it off so he could be the hero of the day. This is the man who would light a fire to be the fireman who puts it out and be a hero.
What is the UKIP policy on running down the police force?
We will stop it.
Thank you.
It's that simple, and we won't privatise it. We absolutely believe, like Douglas was talking about the importance of investing in defence, it's of course important to invest in the police as well. And one of our policies is very much, we really think we need to care about our veterans more. And we have a policy to give any veteran who served in our armed forces a job, a guarantee of a job, particularly if they've served over 12 years, in the prison service, the police force, or the border force, or the NHS, or some other related public service if they have the expertise. So that is another way in which we will help to beef up the police force, and we have a budget for that.
Since Tony Blair gave devolution within the United Kingdom, there's a group of people who've been disadvantaged and disenfranchised, and they are the English. We come fourth best in everything. We are the milk cow. And that is going to result in the next Parliament with people like the Scottish Nationalists, Sinn Féin, the Democratic Unionist Party, and Plaid Cymru holding power over we English people. I would like UKIP, the United Kingdom doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. It's sad to say, but it doesn't. would Ukip, which is primarily an English party and is seriously considered to be so on the Celtic fringe, they're not going to vote for you. No more than they voted for the Conservatives. Your power base is in England. I would like you to say that you are going to fight for an English party to give the English people a vote.
You're absolutely right. Most of our support is in England at the moment. That's absolutely true. However, it's certainly not true to say that we don't have support in the other countries of the United Kingdom as well. We are actually the only political party that has representation right across the country, in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales and in England. And we are growing in those countries too, and in particularly in Wales. I was talking to our Welsh MEP, Nathan Gill, just last night, and he is confident that we will have seats in the Welsh Assembly next year. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And just to carry on as well, UKIP is absolutely 100% behind English votes for English laws.
I think many of the things you said are sadly true. We have in this country been, if you like, subsidising separatism. And I think that is a big mistake we've made.
Yes.
If the different parts of the United Kingdom all lived within their own tax base, it wouldn't just be fairer for England. I think it would be fairer for them. One of the reasons why in Scotland politics has been dominated by two different versions of socialism is because it doesn't pay for anyone to stand for election offering a lower tax and spend alternative, because the Barnett formula means someone else is going to pick up the bill. I think we've reached a stage where we need a new settlement. We need a fairer settlement. The so-called Barnett formula has lived beyond its sell-by date. We need to make sure that Scotland raises money within Scotland and spends that money within Scotland. And if we did that, I think the country that produced Adam Smith, one of the greatest philosophers of the modern world, would be a little bit more like Adam Smith's country and a little bit less like Gordon Brown's country. So I think it would be good for Scotland and good for Wales and good for Northern Ireland if we fundamentally change the way we fund the United Kingdom. But let me say one thing. I am passionate in believing in a United Kingdom. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
We need... There are many people who dream of creating a greater European superstate, who would love the idea of a disunited kingdom. Yeah? I believe we're better off together, but I do think we need to fundamentally change the relationship between the different parts of the United Kingdom. Fundamentally, I want for my part of England the same powers of local self-determination that people have in Scotland and Wales. But I think we need to do that with local taxes and a fairer funding settlement. And I think Britain is worth standing up for and defending, and I speak as an Englishman too. It's possible to be English and British and want a different relationship between the different member states, but one that works for all of us.
Would you bring a referendum for the death penalty?
I quite often in politics say things that people agree with, and sometimes I say things in politics that people disagree with. And I'm going to tell you my view on the death penalty, and you might agree with me or not. I am passionately against restoring the death penalty. Now, this has cost me votes before, but if the most important thing in the world to you is restoring capital punishment, I'm not the person for you. I think that in a civilized country, when people commit certain crimes that are so horrific, yes, you should incarcerate them for the term of their natural life. Yes, you should put them in prison forever. But I don't believe in restoring the death penalty. And if you disagree, you're going to have to, I hope, agree to disagree. I'm telling you what I think, not what I think you want to hear.
I might strike a slightly dissonant tone because I'm not a UKIP member. What I don't quite understand is you haven't said why throughout the whole world the EU is so admired. The Americans want us to stay in, the Japanese want us to stay in, the big business wants us to stay in, the foreign corporations in Telford want us to stay in because they've got access to a market of 500,000 people. In my humble opinion, The reason why so many people vote for UKIP is a linguistic problem. We don't speak foreign languages. If you speak French or Dutch or German, you love these countries and you love the organisation which has given us post-war peace. Mr. Everidge. Mr. Everidge. You said Verhofstadt. It's not. It's Verhofstadt. Downstairs, it says taxes with an apostrophe. There is no apostrophe. That's English for you. Wake up and start learning French and German. For example, yes.
France and Germany.
Our Prime Minister, who went to Eton, said Médecins Sans Frontières. Sans Frontières, it's not an English word, it's a French word, and it's frontière.
I know that. I speak French.
Yesterday.
Stop shrieking because it's...
Yes. Just one last comment on language. Yesterday, I winced with embarrassment at being English when I saw a man.
Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, asseyez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Asseyez-vous, asseyez-vous. Monsieur, asseyez-vous, asseyez-vous. That was sit down.
He aggressively questioned the Lufthansa person and said the children are from Halten, the exchange students were from Halten am See. Well, it's not am See, it's am See. The word is der See.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Thank you.
And if you want to know why there are no young people in Europe, there are 2 million mixed marriages from Erasmus students in Europe. They're intermingling and making peace in Europe.
Thank you for your contribution. Now, sorry, no, hang on. It's a public meeting, and everyone has the right to express a view. I listened with great interest in what the gentleman said, and I have to say that, frankly, I disagree with you. When you say that the European Union is admired throughout the world, certainly diplomats and the political elite around the world admire it. The sort of people that go to Davos, the sort of people that form a sort of technocratic elite that preside over the Western world, central bankers, government officials, they all admire the European Union because it's largely created by people like them, for people like them. Yeah. But all I would say is that if you think the European Union is such a wonderful idea, surely we can agree that we should allow the people to have a say on it. And if you wish to campaign, if you wish to campaign for Britain to remain in whatever language, you should be free to do so. What we need is a referendum on in or out. Now, if the European Union was such a wonderful project, then I'm sure those who believe that we should be in would be campaigning for a referendum because they would be so confident that the people would embrace our continued membership. Now, we often have it suggested by the Europhiles that being against the European Union is somehow unsophisticated, somehow atavistic. Somehow it's just a question of us not learning enough foreign languages. Well, Rudyard Kipling once wrote a poem where he said, "What do they know of England who only England know?" Actually, people who have an appreciation of Europe as Europe really is, as a diverse place of difference, they're the ones who are most sceptical of the idea of forcing Europe to be the same. Yeah. I love France. Some of the happiest years of my life were spent in Italy. Europe is great because it's different. Where did we get this idea that Europe has to all be the same? I would argue that the reason why Europe became so great and achieved so much culturally and artistically is precisely because Europe was never governed by a homogenizing, technocratic, top-down elite. And I think if Europe was to reject the European project, if Europe was to recognize the idea of democratic self-determination for her people, I think Europe could become an extraordinary, remarkable world center once again. We're not wanting to leave the European Union because we don't like France, or because we can't speak German, or because we don't like Italian. We believe in democratic self-determination for all of Europe.
Well, we can get a referendum if we work hard enough, if we campaign hard enough, and if good people like you put that X in the right box. And that is, I think, a positive note to end on. So thank you very much for coming. Do please stay and chat. I think the bar is still open. Yes, Tom is nodding, that's lovely. So do please stay and have a drink. And thank you very much again for coming. And yes, I hope we've helped you show tonight a little bit about how we are not little Englanders, but we do believe in Great Britain, that Great Britain has a huge amount to offer this country, and that UKIP believes in Britain. So I hope you will vote UKIP.